Our food supply typically has not been humane, but alternatives are disrupting the norms of the agricultural industry and creating a more friendly environment. Bruce Freidrich is the Executive Director of the Good Food Institute and co-trustee of New Crop Capital. By assisting and investing in the most promising plant and culture-based alternatives to animal agriculture, GFI and NCC are creating a healthy, humane, and sustainable food supply. Bruce's articles appear regularly in the Huffington Post. He has appeared on numerous network television news shows and is a popular speaker at many of the nation's top universities, discussing the problem in conventional animal agriculture and how new alternatives are disrupting the industry for the good of the planet. I'm here with Bruce Freidrich of the Good Food Institute, and we're going to talk about how GFI has been helping change the food industry. Welcome to the show, Bruce.
Thank you very much, Nafsika. I'm delighted to be here.
Thank you for coming. What is the Good Food Institute?
Well, the Good Food Institute is a nonprofit organization, 501c3, and we are focused on basically transforming agriculture away from the industrialized use of animals and toward healthier, more sustainable, more environmentally responsible, and more humane alternatives.
So how does it differ exactly from other organizations looking to promote healthy, sustainable, healthy eating?
Well, we're basically attacking the problem from the supply side instead of the demand side. So the central brainstorm of the Good Food Institute is that pretty much everybody, when they're making their food decisions, they think about price, they think about taste, and they may not be thinking about convenience, but if the product's not convenient, they're not going to eat it. So 100% of people eating in restaurants right now, 100% of people shopping in grocery stores right now, if you look at what it is that they're eating and what it is that they're buying, literally everybody is thinking, does this taste good? And how much does it cost? And then of course, if it's not there, they're not able to buy or order it. So our focus is on basically using the principles of behavioral economics, the principle of making the default choice, the choice that is healthy and humane and sustainable. So specifically, we're focused on creating plant-based meats and clean meat that is delicious, that is cost competitive, and that's available everywhere.
What are the alternative plant-based meats that are out there, and how are you helping make easier for people to go plant-based?
So there are a lot of phenomenal plant-based meats that are currently on the market. So a few of the more exciting and newer are courtesy of Impossible Foods, which was founded by a Stanford biomedical professor named Pat Brown. And another one is Beyond Meat, which was founded by a guy named Ethan Brown, no relation to Pat Brown, oddly enough. And the sort of central revelation of both, or the central concept of both Beyond Meat and Impossible Foods, these guys said basically, look, meat is made up of certain component parts. Meat is made of lipids, it's made of amino acids, minerals, water. There is nothing in meat that we cannot replicate with plants. And that's what they're doing. And for example, Pat Brown and Impossible Foods have created the Impossible Burger. And Ethan Brown with Beyond Meat, he created chicken strips that when Bill Gates tried them, he said, what I just tasted was not just a clever meat substitute. What I just tasted was a taste of the future of food. And Bill Gates ended up investing, and he wrote a blog called The Future of Food, in which he said that plant-based proteins are the future.
And what is clean meat? What do you consider clean meat exactly?
Well, clean meat is basically, some people call it lab-grown meat, some people call it cultured meat. We're calling it clean meat. It's just a different way of growing meat. So instead of growing crops and feeding them to animals and raising the animals and slaughtering the animals, we basically go straight to the cells, and we use the principles of regenerative medicine to just feed the cells with a nutrient bath, and the cells multiply and grow. So instead of feeding an animal and the cells multiply and grow, but it's a vastly inefficient process wherein the animal expends most of those calories simply existing. Here you feed the cells directly, and what it looks like in that commercialization is basically a meat brewery. So you have, that's what a brewery is you're creating beer, but here instead you have massive fermenters that are creating meat. And we're calling it clean meat both because it's environmentally far more sustainable, so sort of nod to clean energy. It requires exponentially less water, less land, less resources, and it creates about 95% fewer greenhouse gases than industrialized animal agriculture. And then it's also just a cleaner product. So right now, according to the Centers for Disease Control in Atlanta, there are tens of millions of cases of foodborne illness every single year from contaminated meat. There are more than 100,000 hospitalizations. There are thousands of deaths, all from Salmonella, Campylobacter, E. coli, and that sort of thing. All of that goes away with clean meat. It's just a cleaner product that doesn't have all of that bacteria. Also doesn't have any drug residues, doesn't have any antibiotic residues, and so on.
So, okay, we have plant-based meats and clean meat, but I mean, why promote that when you can just promote beans and greens?
Yeah, I mean, we'll be delighted if plant-based meat doesn't take off, or if clean meat doesn't take off because beans and greens are so wildly successful. That would be great. But we've had beans and greens for decades, and the anti-factory farming movement and the slow food movement has been promoting beans and greens for decades. But back to the concept of behavioral economics, there appears to be something in meat that an awful lot of people, whether it's physiological or psychological, there are a lot of people who want to eat meat. But if we can create plant-based meat that is basically the exact same thing in terms of the taste profile, and it's less expensive, and it will be by default be healthier and more sustainable and better for animals, we think a lot of people will switch. In other words, we're saying here are the factors that dictate consumer choice. And for the most part, it's taste, it's price, it's convenience. Maybe it's a little bit health, but you look at the fact that 80% of Americans eat fast food on a monthly basis, 50% of Americans eat fast food on a weekly basis, and you actually look at what people are eating in restaurants, look at what they're buying in grocery stores, health is pretty far down. Taste, price, convenience, 100%. So we're just saying, let's use the principles of behavioral economics. Let's not require that people change the factors that dictate their choice. Let's play with those factors and make better products. And that's what plant-based meat does, and that's what clean meat does.
How is GFI supporting the growth of these industries?
Yeah, so at the Good Food Institute right now we have 15 staff, and we're hiring about 20 more staff. We have the budget for that. And we have a science and technology department, an innovation department, a policy department, a corporate engagement department, and a communications department. And they all work together to, basically they operate as a sort of think tank slash accelerator slash incubator for these entire market sectors. So for example, our scientists are doing what are called technological readiness assessments. They're saying this is where we are now, this is where we want to get. Where we are now is plant-based meats that are not perfect. They don't taste exactly like animal-based meat, and they're a little bit expensive. What we want to get to is substitutes for all of the meats that people eat that are cost competitive with animal-based meat. Similarly with clean meat. Where we are now is nothing on the market. Although our expectation is that in 5 to 10 years. In 5 years, we'll have products on the market that will be expensive. In 10 years, we'll have products on the market that are cost competitive with conventional animal products. And our scientists are saying, this is where we are, this is where we need to get, here are the hurdles, and what do we need to do to clear those hurdles? And then we're reaching out and we're finding the scientists, the tissue engineers, the synthetic biologists, the plant biologists, the entrepreneurs, and we're working with them to actually deal with these problems. Our innovation department is going to top schools for tissue engineering, for synthetic biology, for plant biology, for entrepreneurship, and we're going to these schools and we're finding the people who are the next crop, the best and the brightest in these areas, and we're saying, hey, you're a tissue engineer, maybe you were going to go into medicine, or you're a synthetic biologist, maybe you were going to go into chemicals, or you're an entrepreneur, who knows what you were going to do as an entrepreneur, and we're saying you can do a tremendous amount of good in the world and do very well for yourself if you go into one of the companies that already exists, or if you start your own company. And it goes on and on. Our policy department is working on the regulatory space. Our corporate engagement department is reaching out to the big food companies and meat companies to invite them to diversify their protein offerings and so on. So we've got a lot of stuff going on, and all of it is focused on this is where we are now, this is where we want to get, how do we do that?
Do you think for fast food joints, this is going to be something that we can see globally expanding to all fast food restaurants, veggie burgers, you know? Because I know there's a few right now, right? They're not all. Like, I don't know why not all. Like, why doesn't McDonald's have a veggie burger, for example?
Yeah, if you look at it, our corporate engagement department has just done an analysis of the top 100 chain restaurants, and more than half of them do not have a plant-based entree at the moment. There are a couple who have literally nothing. Like there's nothing at a couple of these places that you can go into and get something completely plant-based. Even their French fries are in animal lard at a couple of these places.
Wow.
So, but yeah, that's the big question. And again, this is where what these companies care about. They care about consumer demand, obviously. They care about prices, obviously. So if we can create the products that people want, because
at a good price.
Yeah.
I mean,
they're delicious and they're cost competitive, yeah, absolutely, these companies will switch over. And I mean, our hypothesis, which seems to be backed by our experience, is that no matter how good veggie burgers get, no matter how good veggie nuggets get, there is some portion of the population, unclear just how big it is, but probably substantial, that wants to eat actual animal meat. And we feel confident that once you have two products, and one of them is produced on modern farms, in modern slaughterhouses, and one of them is produced in essentially meat breweries. One of them is laden with bacteria, has all of these drug and antibiotic residues. One of them doesn't. I mean, people right now, they eat meat despite how it's produced. Nobody is eating meat because they're excited about industrialized animal farming. Nobody's eating meat because they're excited about slaughterhouses. People eat meat despite that. Once we have products that are better for them, better for the environment, cleaner, safer, and have a completely transparent production process, all of these companies, they're going to be live streaming their process, the Friendly Neighborhood Meat Brewery, and they'll be live streaming the process. On the other hand, these modern industrialized animal farms, they're actually making it illegal to find out what happens on the farms, what happens in the slaughterhouses. Like, it's not illegal to go undercover in a retirement home. It's not illegal to go undercover in any place else. But something like a dozen states have made it illegal to go undercover on a farm or in a slaughterhouse. So this is the opposite of that. This is complete transparency. It's a healthier, safer, more humane product.
And lastly, how do you see the food industry in 10 years?
In 10 years, I think, we're very, very encouraged by some of the signs that we've seen, even just in the last 6 months. Like Cargill is getting rid of its feedlots and says that they want to put those resources into alternative proteins, especially plant-based proteins. ADM has opened a plant-based protein manufacturing plant in North Carolina, as well as doing a couple of other really interesting things that are very in favor of this sort of market shift. Tyson Foods,
so the biggest chicken, right?
I mean, Tyson Foods opened its first venture capital fund. It's called Tyson New Ventures. It's a $150 million venture capital fund, and they're specifically focused on plant-based meat and clean meat. And their very first investment was in Beyond Meat. They bought a 5% stake in Beyond Meat. So we're super encouraged by the direction that the entire sort of big food, including big meat, the direction that they're going. And I think in 10 years, you're going to see a significant shift toward plant-based meat. And we take a lot of encouragement in plant-based milk. If you'd looked at plant-based milk 15 years ago, it was at 0, right? And now it's 10%, which is 40 times as large as the plant-based meat sector right now as a proportion of its industry.
It's like a staple now. Everybody has an almond milk in their fridge, vegan or non-vegan. So.
Yeah, no, exactly. 90% of people who are buying plant-based milk are also buying animal-based milk. We think we can absolutely do that with plant-based meat, and just getting up to parity with plant-based milk takes about 1.5 billion animals out of the industrialized animal agriculture system, and also does a massive positive impact on climate, on water use, on food sustainability, on the full sort of range of issues where industrialized animal agriculture is problematic.
Well, let's hope it keeps going. Thank you so much for all your information, and thank you for coming on the show.
Thanks, Nafsika. I'm delighted to be here.
Thank you. We'll be right back.